All right, welcome to Geek Speak with your hosts, Matthew Harris and me, Meredith Loughran. Our special guest is Marc Rienzo, a VFX supervisor with credits in franchises such as Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and several Marvel films. His visual effects work with creating great-looking characters was a launch point for his new family card game, and Bad Guy Nonsense was born. Please welcome Marc Rienzo.
Hey, Mark.
Hello. Hey, you guys.
Insert crowd noise. Now, you would think, folks, that, with that intro and Meredith saying that, all these credits that he has, he's got like some of my top favorite movies on his resume. But you'd think that that's what we'd be talking about, but it's not. Mark has been being very creative and productive during the shutdown, or the great pause, as Meredith calls it.
Mm-hmm.
Great pause.
Yeah, and so Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about the game and how you came up with it, and what we're looking at here.
Sure. Well, Bad Guy Nonsense I developed with my kids, and it's truth be told, it's been going on a little longer than the quarantine. It was a side thing that we were doing for fun. My son and I went down a rabbit hole of card games about last summer, and my son's constantly coming up with new games and developing and testing new ideas, and it was just a fun thing that we all did together. I have two daughters as well, and I love to draw. I've always loved comic books. That's kind of how I ended up in film in the first place. So it kind of snowballed from there, and I was drawing and creating characters with them, and we realized we actually kind of made a really fun game here. We started playing with more and more people, and it spread that way. And then with the quarantine, it was like, all right, let's focus on this and take advantage of this time and finish it up. And that's exactly what's happened. So I'm really proud of how far it's come, and my kids are really excited. We're launching it on Tuesday, and yeah, it's pretty cool. It's been quite the adventure and different type of work for myself, which I've quite enjoyed quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. And for anybody who's listening on the replay and kind of going back in time a little bit, the Kickstarter actually launches on June 16th, 2020, and we are recording on the 15th. So we're a day ahead of schedule, which is really exciting because we're going to blast this out on our social media and all over Geek Insider and that realm. Go ahead, Matthew. Sorry, I interrupted.
Oh, no, you're fine. And I was just going to say, generally, we don't get into these type of projects. And I told Mark this, we don't get into these when they're this early on Kickstarters, because too many times we've seen it where somebody has a lot of steam, they've got a good pitch, and then they just kind of blow it off. And then we're left kind of holding the bag, looking silly because we backed this program. But I have absolutely no doubt that this one's going to take off. And the reason is because the game itself, it looks fun. It's got some great artwork on it. The trading / battle card games are very popular. I play one, and Meredith plays it online. But then you have Mark's resume, and guys, I'm telling you, look up Mark on IMDb, because there's a lot of good movies. And I mean, Thor Ragnarok, enough said, and I love Book of Eli. That was another great one of mine. But anyway, when you see his resume, you're going to see that he's not some guy sitting in his mom's basement trying to come up with a game. and the game graphics will show some through on our YouTube channel. If you watch this on the YouTube channel, there's some really cool stuff. And then you can check out Mark's Kickstarter, of course. Get out there, help him reach those stretch goals. And because I know we are, Meredith just added to watch it, and then I tried to, but I couldn't get logged into my damn Kickstarter, so I got to figure that out. But Mark, how many characters, or what's the basis of the game? Tell us what's the concept of the game.
Well, the concept is you're a bounty hunter, and there's been a nonsense plague infected on the universe. So there's like a lot of like wackadoo characters that, like, at first glance could be a cool character, but then there's just something off, or there's some of the bad guys have these like really nonsensical poems. There's just something silly about it. So the idea is you're a bounty hunter and you got to capture all the infected bad guys. So I grew up on strategy games. I love like just the traditional like Stratego, Risk, and Axis and Allies and that type of stuff. And then that and like the logic that goes into some of the computer graphics work. That's just the way my brain works. So I loved figuring out the math of like how many cards would it take to get this and that sort of thing. Just figuring out the game mechanics of it all to like make it a fun experience and different every time. So there's different card combinations you have to acquire in order to capture the bad guys. And then of course there's like different special cards that cause different mayhem between you and your opponents to keep it back and forth.
Nice.
Active and different every time. So that's the kind of the premise though is you're a bounty hunter getting bad guys.
So
yep,
go ahead, Meredith. No,
Okay.
Go ahead. I had the last one. You go ahead.
Okay.
I could
So I
keep
was
going.
gonna-
I could keep going.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you have a passion for it, and I can see it in the artwork with these characters. And you said that you were working on it with your son mostly. I mean, your daughters. I'm sure that they chimed in a little bit. How much of an influence did they have on these characters?
Oh, quite a bit, and my girls are going to get mad at me for that because they were very, very vocal as well. So yeah, and especially my middle daughter kept insisting I add more and more female characters, which we absolutely did, and gave them their place on the box cover and everything. So they were quite involved.
Oh, very
Absolutely.
good. Yeah,
Nice.
because I'm
No,
seeing them on some of these spreads that we're sharing here, and they look very powerful. And what's the word? The nice word that I'm looking. They're not so bodacious.
Family. Yes, there was being a like 90s comic art fan. That was a challenge. I'm making a
Right.
family friendly game here, so that was like there is no blood, there is no guns, there is no innuendo. It's like it's cool, exciting, visually like exciting characters, but it's hey, I can still play this with my kids, and that was also a big seed for this game. Is I love these movies and superheroes and stuff, and don't get me wrong, I enjoy Deadpool too. I love it. I'm not a insert adjective there, but
Right.
I love those movies, but it really bummed me out when the new Superman came out and I couldn't take my son. He was like 5 at the time. I mean, it was not just slightly PG-13. Like some of them, like Batman, Superman, I was like, he was like maybe 7 then. It's just so. To me, that those type of characters should be more accessible to like young kids. I grew up on Super Friends and stuff, so I mean,
Right.
there's a balance. There's a balance, of course. A lot of the PG-13 films could easily be PG with like a very, very minor tweaks that wouldn't affect the film whatsoever. And I mean, I know why they do it. You lose a lot of the market that way. Whatever, it's all about money.
Right.
But,
Yep. Exactly.
I wanted to enjoy that type of stuff, my passion with my kids. So I just refrain from a couple little things, and it kept it a family game, which I'm proud of.
So, how many? Is this just all cards? Is there a board that goes along with it? And so, what does the game include? What are people going to get when they contribute to the Kickstarter?
It's 64 playing cards, and now the cards are oversized, meaning they're basically double the size of a normal card. If you take a normal playing card and put it on its side and stack them on top, that's the size of the card.
Okay.
And that came about just from playing other games, and sometimes they have a big card. I'm like, this big card is cool. And when I was doing my tests, my artwork, you shrink it down to a normal size card, you lose so much of the detail and stuff. So I was like, I toyed around with having like 2 different versions of the game for a while. I was like, nope, this is it. They're big, oversized cards. The kids love it. It's fun. And then the game's really critical that you shuffle well. So I stuck with the linen card stock. So
Yeah, they're the thicker. Yes, that was something I
Yeah,
noticed.
they're more like,
go ahead.
there's that texture to it, so they just shuffle really well, like normal playing cards. Where game cards are more like cardboard, and it's harder to shuffle. So it just has that part of the playing experience is like the big cards, with glossy surface, and the nice shuffle ability to it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to lose that.
Now, because of your Kickstarter, it hasn't launched yet, so we don't see all of the different stretch goals and cool things that you're going to offer with your sponsors and pledges and things like that. But so sight unseen, I'm thinking people might want to get 2 decks, one for playing with and one for maybe collecting, because you do have some really neat artwork. Or will you be having some artwork available as you reach some of those stretch goals?
That is a good question. I have toyed around with it. Well, first off, there is going to be a dual deck option that you can order, and like a 10 deck option for like a dealer, or I make a joke on the page, or for the parent that wants to stockpile of birthday gifts, which is something in my house that we often do, is stock up on birthday gifts. But as far as prints, I started a art of book, which I have made myself pause on. I'm waiting to see if the interest is there. Prints might be available as well, but I guess I can give you a little announcement here that's going to be going out to the list soon.
We'll be back right after this.
Check it out. MobileEdge.com has award-winning products with innovative features and contemporary, edgy designs that empower you to look sharp and travel smart with your mobile tech. Your beloved, not to mention expensive gaming gear and mobile tech devices are an extension of you, so give them the protection and style they deserve wherever you go. Find them at MobileEdge.com and protect your tech with Mobile Edge. Bring it on. Hey Geek Insiders, Mobile Edge has a special coupon code for our dedicated listeners. Get 25% off your Mobile Edge gear using coupon code GEEK25. That's GEEK25. Geek out.
Prints might be available as well, but I guess I can give you a little announcement here that's going to be going out to the list soon, is we have puzzles, big 1,000 piece puzzles.
Oh wow!
And you can pick whichever card character you want.
Oh, cool!
So I can get, So I'll send you some images of that in the band.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And so,
but yeah, I thought that was a really neat way to, instead of a print, that was just a more like interactive way to experience it. And
you're keeping it family friendly by doing that too.
Right.
So that's perfect.
Yeah. So I had some prints made for myself, and I was like, oh wow, look, these are awesome. And my kids were like, cool, great, all right,
now what?
Play. So when I get a puzzle, it's like hours of entertainment.
Mm-hmm. That is really a good idea. I love that. So now this is through badguynonsense.com, and you are offering a free version so that people kind of know what they're getting into. Because a lot of times with the, when it comes to Kickstarters, I see a lot of comic books, I see some games, some stories and things like that. And, so we get those visuals and things, and you certainly have that. But when it comes to an actual game, especially a strategic one, people kind of want to know that it makes sense and that they can learn how to play it and all that stuff. Can you speak to that? Like, do you have any kind of information on how it's played and how these cards interact so that you can battle?
Sure. On the page, if you sign up right now, there is a print and play, where you just get some PDFs and you can print them out. I was hesitant to do that at first just because it's not the same quality, everything we just talked about with the linen cards and everything. So it's a smaller, lower res version of the game, but for the person that is really adamant about understanding the game mechanics, that is there and available for free right now for anyone to check out. And at the same time, of course, when you download that PDF, you can check out the rules. And the rules, again, family-friendly game, in my opinion. You should be able to crack open and play really quickly. No family wants to sit there and like spend an hour going over the rules.
Right.
So on the box, it's 4 minutes to learn, and we kept the rules really straightforward and simple, so you can be up and running and playing real quick. Most people, I believe, are checking out the rules, but you are absolutely welcome to do the print and play and give it a go.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Very
cool.
neat.
Now, of course, I've got to think about the future and going with the assumption that this is going to be successful. Do you have in mind like expansion packs later on, or are you just focusing on the here and now, getting this going and kind of think of that stuff later?
I'm focusing on the here and now, although not necessarily expansion packs, but I did start on a second edition, which would either be standalone on itself or shuffle right into this and play, which I had to pause on that because I'm focusing on the whole Kickstarter. But some of those cards, and also you close play testing at a certain point and make that the final game. So that's what we did. Although in my house we have half a dozen cards from, well, more than that, but we have a handful of cards that have been heavily play tested in addition to the deck. So those will be some of the stretch goals.
Oh, very cool.
So
very cool.
They've been printed and tested, and I'm gonna throw them in, assuming we do well.
Mm-hmm.
But it is good to.
You've got homegrown beta testers.
It's good. Yeah, and it's always good to play the base game and get good at it that way. Basically, the more it just gets more complicated, a little more chaotic. So, yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
So, Mark, what is the initial goal for the Kickstarter campaign? What's the base goal that you need to get in order to get this off the ground?
I'm trying to keep it as low as possible just to get that start at $7,750.
Not bad at all. Not bad at all.
Yeah, not for a game.
Yeah, it's my first Kickstarter, so trying to keep it, as manageable as possible. Yeah. And the hope for that first stretch goal is to be 50% funded in the first 48 hours. The way my understanding of all the research I've done with Kickstarter is that first 24, 48 hours is the most critical to have the biggest first day that you can, and they put it out. I mean, there's 40 million visitors to Kickstarter a month. Mm-hmm. So, just the way it works is they make money. Like you make money, they make money. So if you have a big first day, they're going to push it in front of a lot of people. So if anyone's thinking about it, please pledge on day one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and folks, you all out there listening, we helped the Indie Devil Rob. We helped him with Cat. What is it? I always mess up.
Cat Dad and Super Mom.
Okay, well I had it right.
Yeah,
I was going to mess it up. I thought I was going to mess it up, but it was that. And I'm waiting on my shipment from there because we helped him reach his goals and a lot of his stretch goals. So you guys that you're listening to this, like Mark said a minute ago, if this isn't your cup of tea as far as wanting to play the game, think about birthdays. Christmas is coming up around the corner. Unfortunately, it's already here or almost here. And so just keep that in mind, because this type of thing right here, you get in on this and it becomes super popular. Then you get to say, hey, I was there when this all launched. I listened to Mark on the Geek Insider Geek Speak show. And, then next time you see one of his credits on one of these movies, you can go, hey, I got some of his, exclusive, or not exclusive, but I got some of his artwork. And these are the kind of projects that we love. We love the startups. We love the independent writers and just entertainers. And, like I said earlier, I'm sure if we talk to Mark about his movie career, there's going to be, well, one, there's going to be a lot of things he couldn't discuss with us, but two, we could probably just talk for hours and hours and hours about his resume, because the man has his fingers in a lot of great stuff out there. And just seeing examples of the artwork that's going to be on these cards, I don't have a bunch of people that I can play with. I'm basically retired with my wife that just got married. And so we don't have kids or grandkids here all the time to play a game, but I guarantee you, I'm going to have one of these decks and it'll go with my comic books or back here on my shelf, with all the collectibles.
I was actually going to say something and I'm biting my tongue because we're trying to keep it family friendly here.
Uh-oh.
But I do want to actually talk a little bit about Mark's history and entertainment and stuff like that. But Matthew, before I do that, you wanted to follow up with another question?
No, I was making a statement. If I did have a question, I forgot it because I was talking too long.
Yeah,
So you go ahead.
I do that all the time. I'm sorry.
Nope.
So, Mark,
Wait, Mark.
Thanks for that, Matthew.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for that, Matthew. Because I mean, as I've been, telling all my friends about it, some of them have kids and they're like, oh, awesome, great, like, perfect. But then, of course, I've got some buddies that don't have kids, so they're, but everyone knows somebody that, like you said, birthday gifts, that kind of thing. It's kind of a no-brainer there. It's awesome.
And I love the fact that it is that your daughters chimed in and said we need more female characters, because that really brings in a lot of the girls that might want to play. And for me, and maybe it's because of our age and the time period that we grew up in, it was like the girls got to play with the Barbies and the boys got the Tonka trucks and stuff like that. And I was just like, I want the Tonka trucks, I want the Legos and the Connect sets and things like that. And I want to play the card games and everything. It's like poker is for boys. It's like, no, it's not. I want to play cards too. So I think it's really cool that your daughters had kind of pushed your dad, to say, hey, be a little bit more inclusive.
And not just my two daughters, I have a niece as well. So they were nonstop and they absolutely love it. And it was fun. And just like, to use your word, bodacious, if there was any reason there wasn't enough females at first, it was just me trying to avoid that, like, fine line of, offending somebody. So it's just... Yeah.
Which can be, it is a very fine line these days. And the one thing that you said earlier that stuck out to me was, you were a big fan of the 90s era's comics, and that's really when I got into comics, Lady Death and Vampirilla and all of them. And the first thing you seen when they came around the corner was, Hooters. And with that, even when you went to the comic book conventions in the 90s, it was horrible, man. Well, I would say horrible. I enjoyed it. It was great to look at, but you had all these models that were supposed to be the characters and they're half dressed, and they just weren't children-friendly environments. And these days, the conventions are different. It's two different beasts between the 90s and now. But I could definitely see that influence in your artwork, not the bosom, but the 90s comic influence. Are there any particular, or who is your favorite comic book artist? And then, of course, who's your favorite comic book hero?
Oh, well, I mean, I could list 1,000 artists, but for me, the ones that had the most impact was the Image guys.
Yes.
Todd Mcfarlane, Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Silvestri, all those guys. I mean, I was deep into comics, and I just couldn't. I would, I'd have my pull list. I'd go every week, and I always drew. But once, like, the first Batman film came out, I really started getting into comic books back then, and that's where I was like, I want to draw comic books. And I was going to school of visual arts for comic book illustration. That was my first year major. But those guys really, I mean, they made history with all that, and they continue to influence me to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I loved the Image guys as well. Wildcats was one of my favorite comics. Grifter, one of my favorite characters. And then, of course, who can forget Todd Mcfarlane? He just did a Kickstarter. You heard about that, right?
I did, yes. The Spawn figures, absolutely. Yeah, it was huge.
Yeah.
I follow him online quite a bit. I got to meet Jim Lee just recently out in Los Angeles. Was it last fall? It was pretty great. He was signing for his Kickstarter, the backpacks. So I got the artist backpack from Jim Lee, the Hex bag.
Oh my
And
gosh.
he did a special signing. Yeah, it was awesome.
And I heard that he is really, really approachable at these events, that he's a super nice guy. I've heard stories of him going out of his way to make sure that somebody got a picture, or that they felt that they got their money's worth with him.
Oh, he was so cool. He not only signed my book, but like I chatted with him a bit. I told him the story, like how I waited in the rain in Manhattan back in the 90s to get his autograph on Wildcats #1, and like he was asking me which comic store, which day, like he wanted specifics, and I didn't have the exact specifics because it was in the 90s. But I mean, I still have it on my wall with the certificate of authenticity. But he was so friendly. He did a sketch for me as well. I've got a little Batman sketch inside my X-Men giant size X-Men book. So I'll treasure that forever. He's a really cool guy.
So I wanted to ask about the genesis of Marc Rienzo, the artist, because a lot of people, they have the creativity and but they often put that aside because maybe family says, oh well, how are you going to make a living from that? And so they go off and they do other things that might be an office job or retail or whatever the case might be. What was your influence growing up as far as your creativity, the artistic side of you? And because for me, honestly, I have the creative side, and my family didn't know what the heck to do with me. They're like, who is this alien child? And so I didn't have the support that I probably could have to take anything to the next level, because they just didn't know. What was it like for you, being young Mark, and when did you know that you wanted to be an artist and be into visual effects and eventually get to where you are?
Well, I have been drawing as long as I can remember, since I was very, very young. And I've no one to thank but my parents for supporting that from the very beginning. They were always very supportive and helped guide me in that path. But also my high school art teacher, Mrs. Diana, hello, if you possibly hear this. I talk to her on Facebook from time to time. But they were all very supportive people in my upcoming in the art world. But what also has always been a factor, and it's still there today, is the stigma of a starving artist. So it was just not ever giving up and never stopping. You can do it. It just takes a ton of work. So I wanted to draw comic books. And as I mentioned, I went to my first year at SVA, but then around that time, and I'd always kind of been at the computers. When I was really little, like we had a Commodore 64 and a VIC-20, and I'd get on my uncle's Amiga. But then in the early 90s there, Jurassic Park came out. I mean, I'd seen a bit of Terminator and I was like, wow. But then when Jurassic Park hit, I was like, oh my God, like you can do that. I mean, they really
right.
set the standard early on quite high. If you can do that, here I am reading Infinity Gauntlet, like that's going to be in the movie someday. And here we are. We just, finished seeing Endgame last year. So I knew back then, I was like, we are going to see all these comic books made as movies. Because I was still high on Batman back then. So, Jurassic Park changed everything for me. I was, again, majoring in comic illustration, so I quickly changed to computer animation. And then I headed down to Ringling in Sarasota, which at the time had a strong computer animation program. That kind of set me on my path. I wasn't as much into the character animation side of things, although I had to learn it. I was always enthralled just by movie magic, like any of the old VHS tapes, seeing the behind the scenes stuff, documentaries, and just being able to tell a story, these like fantasy stories in such a real way, that's what got me into visual effects. But I never stopped drawing, not for long stretches anyway. and I've always still had a passion for comic books and comic book art. So having worked on, like you said, like Spider-Man and all these other big movies, it was great fun and everything, but like I never lost that passion to create my own characters and my own material.
Marc Rienzo presents Bad Guy Nonsense, a family-friendly, all-ages card game where you compete to capture bad guys, employ bounty hunters, bandits, burglars, heroes, and monsters, battle your opponent, and defend your own. Bad Guy Nonsense on Kickstarter now.
So having worked on, like you said, like Spider-Man and all these other big movies, it was great fun and everything, but like I never lost that passion to create my own characters and my own material. So I took advantage of this quarantine time to finish it up and make sure I got it out there.
Yeah, there were a lot of people who I've talked to who said that they were going to put up their pencils, and
Right.
I'm like, that sounds so counterproductive. I mean, you have all this time. You should be launching new things and being busier than ever. I mean, maybe it's not paid work to start, but at least when things open up, you're going to have this whole plethora of stuff that you can present, and I never understood that. So it's really good to hear that you have stayed busy. And in fact, you have this card game now that you're getting ready to launch. And it encompasses the artwork and the digital art and the characters and things like that. So that is really, really cool. And powerful messaging, to be a good example of creativity. Like, why are you putting a pause on that? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, if they didn't put a pause on it though, Meredith, then they couldn't have watched the Tiger King, So, you gotta have your priorities. But it's like Rob said, our friend Rob Anderson, he said, if you came out of this pandemic, this lockdown, and you haven't created something, you don't have anybody else to blame. You can't ever blame not having enough time again because you had time on your hands. You can't blame, a boss because you're at home, you've got this time. And so coming out of this with something, granted, I know this started a while back, but you said that you really started buckling down and focusing on this when everything started locking down. That is a testament, and that's something that your kids are going to be able to reflect back on as well, in troubling times that
you're the example.
Yep, exactly. Now, I wanted to switch gears just 1 second here, and I just wanted to ask, because until this thing takes off like gangbusters, we all still have to work and pay the bills. If you had your choice, what comic book character or superhero movie would you most like to work on?
Oh, wow. I've always been a huge Batman fan. He's always been my favorite, but it's like trying to choose your kids. I have so many favorites, from Silver Surfer to Spider-Man to there's some of the Image guys. There's so many, but if I had to pick one, it's always been Batman for sure.
Well,
Random question: who's your favorite Batman?
Oh, good one.
Oh, Batfleck for sure. When he was first announced, I was like, "Oh my God, no, not him!" Like, I thought it was a horrible choice. Then I saw the movie, and I was like, "Wow!" Like he was just tougher than nails, and I felt like he was a great Bruce Wayne and Batman. I thoroughly enjoyed that. So kind of sad that he's moving on. But
Well, Mark, you'll have to look through
Michael
our.
Keaton, fantastic as well.
Oh, very much so. And of course, I have a soft spot from
Yeah.
Keaton just because he was the first one to bring it to the big screen, and I thought he did it. I thought
Right.
he did the mask of Bruce Wayne really good. And dadgummit, I had a question I was going to just ask.
We did it again.
Oh, yeah, it always happens to me. But you start talking about Batman. I mean, look, I even got my Batman shirt on right now. We got Batman tattoos all over the place. Doggone it, Brenda, Meredith, you got something, and I'll think of my question.
Well, I did want to know. You said that you went to SVA. What other school did you go to, and who would you say is your greatest influence? Besides
The greatest
Mrs.
influence in
Dinah?
terms of I went to Ringling School of Art and Design in Sarasota, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest influence there had to be the other students around me. There was a small, tight-knit group of us. We all closed the computer labs together, worked our butts off, and all got into the industry. And I'm still in touch with quite a few of them today.
Very cool. So, I mean, have you collaborated on other projects with them, or is it just kind of like a casual social type of thing?
Oh no, I've worked in the trenches with many of them on different films. A buddy of mine went down to Weta at the same time. We worked on Lord of the Rings. He stayed there, done very, very well for himself. He's a VFX supervisor there now. Another friend I worked on Spider-Man with. But yeah, I still run into them today, and they're all very successful.
Very cool.
And I remembered it wasn't a
I'd
question
start
I had.
rattling off names, but
Yeah.
I'd start rattling off their names, but I don't know if they won't.
And then you,
We won't out them. Matthew, I don't want you to forget your question again. Spit it out.
well, it wasn't a question. I was just going to tell Mark, you might want to look through geekinsiders.com/podcast. If you scroll down, we actually have an interview with Miss Athena Finger, which is Bill's granddaughter. And that was just an honor. I say I didn't let Meredith in. I kept the interview to myself because I was geeking out, but trying not to.
Yeah, you were fangirling a little bit.
Now, you do know who Bill Finger is, right?
Oh, wow. I will definitely check that out.
Yeah, it's one of
she
the
she was very gracious and so funny. And I'm not going to tell the story about how I met her at Comic-Con because I was shamed. I was terribly shamed. But because I didn't really grow up with comic books or anything like that. So I was like, Bill Finger, who?
Yeah, she comes back and she goes, oh, by the way, I got some girl that we may do an interview with. She's the granddaughter of somebody that has something to do with Batman. And I said, if you say Bill Finger, I'm going to scream. And she goes, her name's Athena Finger. And I went, oh my God, how did you not know who that is?
I had no idea. I was standing in front of like comic book royalty, you know?
Exactly.
But I think in a way maybe she appreciated that because she didn't grow up with comic books either. You know, I mean, she was kind of like shamed to stay quiet too. And it wasn't until she actually fought to get her grandfather's name on the Batman franchise that she really came out and has been an advocate ever since. So it's really, I mean, she's just an amazing person. So shout out to Athena Finger also. But I know I had other questions here, but you know the problem, Mark, is when you have a good person that you can interview, they're answering all your questions before you get to them.
Right. So the Kickstarter launches on Tuesday, folks, and we're going to have it linked.
16th.
You know, it'll be on an article on Geek Insider. You'll be able to see some of the artwork on there as well. But go to the Kickstarter and back in. Go to the
website too, badguynonsense.com.
There you go.
And there you can connect with the game. You can see what's going on. And that is where you can also get these the preview cards, to download for free and print them out. And Mark, how long is that going to be available on your site?
I didn't have any plans on taking the print and play down.
Okay.
Because we're gonna go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I didn't plan on taking it down because after the Kickstarter, like the hope is to still have the game. The Kickstarter is a start, not the one and end all. So hopefully, we can keep going and offer the game further that way. But always have the option for someone to try it first. I've also been looking into. I may or may not. Whether it's an iPhone app or there's some like tabletop type simulator things where you can try it first. Considering, but again, for me, a big part of the game experience is that holding those big cards in your hand, and the quality of play that comes with it.
Well, definitely.
Experience.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I played Magic the Gathering. I worked overnights as a security guard, and a bunch of us would sit in the booth and just play Magic the Gathering. And then a few years later on the Xbox, they came out with a Magic the Gathering game, and it just isn't the same on digital. And now you started this out as the free version, right? That's how some of your friends have been playing and checking it out, and you just recently decided to kick this into a full-fledged print and play game, right?
Yeah, well, the print and play game, I was sending copies to friends, but the print and play came about for the Kickstarter so that someone can try before they buy.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, my question is,
it did start on dry erase cards. Well, literally index cards, and then we upgraded to dry erase cards as we were figuring it all out. And then I was printing at home, and then I was having them printed, and my kids would laugh at me because I kept saying it's done. And like prototype number 9, I had a hard time putting the pen down on the artwork.
The kids are good for something.
Right. And I know how, I'm sure you're the same way, Mark, as Meredith and I are with our writing, is we're our own worst critics, and we can sit there and just keep going back and picking little things. And, if I reread, I can have to stop myself of just reading my article once, because I will do that. I'll go, okay, now I'm going to give it a second read, and I go back through and I'm changing more stuff. And then I end up spending, 3 hours on a 400-word article.
Or you edit to death, and then you're so sick of it, you just don't want to look at it anymore.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's where deadlines are your friends, right? It's,
right.
It's a big thing in visual effects. I think it was George Lucas that first said it. It's the first person I hear say it. It's like art is never finished. It's just you run out of time. Or it's taken away. Go. So like,
words to live by.
Rarely in visual effects do we ever say that's done. It's perfect. Take it. It's usually like that's as good as we're getting with the time we have, and it's
yeah.
So with a lot of the states reopening, and I know you're in Florida and that's reopening. California is being a little bit slower. Is there any word on, you returning to or starting a new project? Is there any movies that you got in the bucket that you can give us the inside that you're working on?
I'm in touch with people. I'm looking forward to shooting resuming. Yeah. I can't say exactly what I'm working on just yet.
Gotcha.
I'm focusing on this.
Okay. And kind of along that same vein, I guess I wanted to ask you, with the world kind of opening up again in the various stages and things, some of the conventions are still trying to salvage the rest of the year. Do you plan on being at any of them and attending them, maybe showcasing these cards?
I got to look into that. As I frequented conventions a lot many years ago, I've never been to like Comic-Con. I was always super busy trying to finish up the movies they were usually being promoted there.
Right.
So although I tried to make it a few times, it just never worked out. I'd been to a lot of conventions in New York and Florida, like the Star Wars celebrations. I'm a big Star Wars nut, by the way. But I'm overdue for a convention visit, so that would be a great thing to try to do for bad guys.
Yeah, that can get you a lot of traction there, Mark. A booth.
Just to walk through traffic and interacting with the people who are walking by. Yeah,
exactly. Having a little printout that says how the game is played, and having maybe some oversized cards of your artwork, even oversized than what they already are, just to show off the artwork. That could be invaluable, man, because those are the type of people that are going to want the game is the people that are at the conventions. And of course it could be a little tricky depending on it's just all going to depend on
anyway. 2020 is
right
kind of wash for a lot of people.
Right.
And we're starting to get word that some are starting to plan the conventions tentatively, but it's still unknown, what guests are going to show up. Are you going to see William Shatner show up to a 100,000 people stadium with, no social distancing? I don't know. It's just going to have to be remain to be seen.
Well,
But
Tampa Bay Comic-Con at this point in time is still planning on launching, and I think that's July 11th, that weekend. And I'm actually planning on being there and meeting up with a few of the comic book creators that we've been talking to and keeping in touch with on Facebook. So that's going to be really cool to see them in person. And then hopefully MegaCon, I think they're having that special one towards the end of the year. I think it's November, end of October or early November, where they're doing kind of a special event because they had to reschedule twice because of the pandemic. So we'll see how that goes. And again, I think a lot of that has to do with the sponsors and whether or not they can get the venues, and then whether or not they're going to have enough people who are manning the tables and things. But that's something that would be really cool to see you with your artwork, and as Matthew was saying, just get some of those supersized cards and let people feel them and touch them. It's that tactile thing, because the family friendly game, it's one thing to see it online and stuff. It's another thing, I think, to just actually handle the cards and go, wow, these are really cool. And I love the artwork and all that stuff. So not to pressure you into anything, Mark.
No, that's
an idea out there.
That's a wonderful idea and a good way to connect with people individually on that concept of the game. You mentioned Magic, and my son absolutely loves Magic, and now he's 9.5 now, so it's like, okay, but that was the thing. It was like we try these different games and stuff when he was really little, and like meanwhile, there's like zombies and brains hanging out. I'm like, yeah. So that just keeping that sort of thing out of it. And there's like tons of guys my age with young kids that's the stuff they love, but you can't really. It's on the fence of whether you can share it with them or not. So that convention would be a great way to be able to see that and showcase that. And if the kids are there, it's a quick game too. You can play a match right there at the table.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
that was one of my questions, was how long does a game typically take? But you've touched on it a couple of times, Mark, and I just really wanted to emphasize this, is that folks, he wanted this to be a family friendly, a kid friendly game. And so there's not guns, there's not blood, there's not big bosomed women on there. It's not the stereotypical comic book characters from the 90s. This is Mark's creations. His kids have given him a lot of feedback on this. He's got young ladies at home, and that he wants them to be able to play the game and not have these stereotypes. And so this is a game that you can get behind on the Kickstarter. And when you get this, like you just said, you can play it with a game within a couple of minutes. It's not going to be like a game of Monopoly where you're sitting there all night, trying to play it. You can play real quick. And we're just coming into summer. School's going to start back up, hopefully in the fall. But these are the kinds of things that bring families together. And we've gone away from the television night most families have. Most families don't even eat at the table together anymore.
We'll be back right after this quick break. For Geek Insider advertising opportunities, contact advertising@geekinsider.com. We offer space on the website, in the daily newsletter, sponsored posts, and advertising space on our podcast. For details, contact advertising@geekinsider.com.
But these are the kinds of things that bring families together. And we've gone away from the television night most families have. Most families don't even eat at the table together anymore. Everybody just kind of grabs their plate and heads off. And this kind of stuff right here is invaluable. And so, take the time, go to the website, check out the Kickstarter, back this project, because like we said earlier, even if you don't play it, you got nieces and nephews that come over sometime, you can play this game with them. You're the cool uncle or aunt that has that badass game, or you can save it for gifts. And this is the kind of stuff that we need more of is this. You can look up to this game, in my opinion. And Mark, you just got to really be applauded for taking the time to put something together like this for your own family, listening to your kids, incorporating their ideas, and then now bringing it out to the masses. And I definitely wish you, great good luck on this. I hope you hit that first stretch goal in the first 24 hours. I think you will, with your reputation, your resume, the artwork, and then just the gameplay itself. I don't see how it cannot be a hit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you so much. I will say, yes, while there's no blood and guns, it's still I still try to keep it edgy. There's plenty of swords and spandex and monsters and teeth and magic and all sorts of fantasy elements in there too. So it's not strawberry shortcake either at the same time.
Gotcha. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Right. It's it's got to have some competition in it. We love to be competitive. There's got to be a winner in there, and so that makes it fun and interactive. But at the same time, it's again, that family friendly aspect of it, which has no age barrier in that. Not really. So it makes it a lot of fun. And again, just being a collectible and available through the Kickstarter campaign. And I think after your campaign is over, you're going to have this available through badguynonsense.com, correct?
That's the plan. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I just realized I kind of tangented off on a question you asked me earlier, what's in it? And it's 64 cards. But it's just a card game. At a certain point, we did early on, it almost was a board game or a card and dice game, but we kept it strictly a card game. Although my son has been insisting I make at least a play mat, so that might be available at a certain point soon because he's insisting on it.
Oh, there you go. So maybe if you hit goal and you go beyond that, maybe that'll be another stretch goal.
Yeah, he'll at least get one, but if there's interest, we'll definitely make that happen too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Now, Mark, when your son, has your kids played it with any of their friends, and if so, what have you heard from them? And then what have you heard from the friends that you did send out decks to? I mean, what has been the main feedback that you've gotten on the game?
We've gotten a lot of great feedback. A review just went up. Board Game Review UK, but yeah, friends and friends of friends, and like I mentioned, my niece and nephew as well. Everyone just has a really good. Since it's so quick to pick up, it's just a lot of fun, and people are ask what I like most is I get a lot of questions about the characters and who they are and stuff. So for me, it was an outlet to put some of my creations in, and I'm not telling a whole entire story, but I put enough little bits in there that make you want to know more. So that's always nice to hear.
Yep.
But people enjoy it.
Yeah. Or actually take the characters, and with that little bit of information that you get, it could spawn a whole generation of people who tell stories and use that as their base character. So that would be kind of cool too.
Well, I hope to continue telling stories with these characters.
Yes.
That would be cool.
There was Friday Night Games did a review, and he was quite taken on one of the characters, and half of his review was talking about how he wanted to know more about Foxbat 1. So that was awesome to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Is
cool.
there any one character that you absolutely love that's like your card?
Yeah, for me, that's the guy I was just referring to.
Foxbat 1.
It's someone. He's a bounty hunter, and it's fairly obvious, at least to me, when I look at the different characters, which ones are more from dad and which ones are more from the kids. Some of them are sillier than others, and some are more serious than others. So the bounty hunters are like all the kind of the tough baddies, which I had a bigger hand in those guys. And again, some of them have been around in my world for quite a long time, but Foxbat 1 for sure. It's kind of a cross between. He looks like he came out of the 90s, which he did.
Right.
Well, we've reached the 50-minute mark, and usually Matthew and I finish up. Yeah, it flew by really fast, and we really appreciate your time. And for anybody who doesn't know, he's hiding in the car from the kids. So
and the dogs.
And the dogs. We usually end with one question we ask all of our guests. Matthew, go ahead. I'll give you the honors of asking that.
Okay. And so the question is, Mark, if you could go back in time and ask your give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
A tough one, especially on air.
Well, considering we're here talking about my card game, that is a really great question. I would tell myself not to wait too long to get back to creating your own content and working on your own material. It's been amazing and fantastic working on all these big movies that I have. However, your own work can get sidetracked at times.
And that's a great answer. And like she said, this is something we ask everybody. I swear one of these days I'm going to put together a big article with everybody's comments in it, because we get some really interesting answers. And of course we get some interesting guests and folks, this is one of them right here. Mark, it's been a real pleasure having you on here. I really wish that we could have dove in more into your resume and, the movies you've worked on, but we definitely understand, this is a passion project. This is something that's cool, new, and it's something that everybody can get behind. And so make sure that you check out the website, ladies and gentlemen, that you give Mark, the bump that he needs. It comes out tomorrow on Tuesday. There's when the Kickstarter starts. And so get out there. Let's help him hit those goals and watch as this project evolves. And, who knows, this could be the next big thing in gaming. It's that well put together, and the artwork is just that beautiful. Mark, is there any place that you want to share, any social media or any, give the website again, any of that stuff, anybody you want to do a shout out to, anything like that?
Yeah, exactly. We want people to know where to follow you.
Oh, sure. Yeah, subscribe on badguynonsense.com. Follow on Kickstarter. My main social media source for Bad Guys is on Instagram, but we also have a Facebook page and Facebook group, as well as Twitter. I'm also on TikTok quite often doing drawings of a lot of these characters. It's not entirely Bad Guy Nonsense. You'll find lots of Batman and Spider-Man and other fun stuff there. But I've tried to, I can't help myself, but I'm drawing my own characters on there as well. So sure. All the above.
Fantastic.
But
I might have to check that out myself.
Mainly Instagram. The earliest updates come from badguynonsense.com, and the second will be Instagram.
All right. And we're going to have all those links available when we post the article, so you'll be able to follow on geekinsider.com as well. And on that note, thank you, Mark. We're going to end the broadcast, and just stay tuned. Hold on 1 second. Thank you for tuning in to Geek Speak, a Geek Insider production powered by NSC Live TV. Become part of our show with sponsorship and advertising opportunities. For details, contact advertising at geekinsider.com or visit podcast.geekinsider.com. The Geek Insider podcast is available on your favorite app, so please hit the follow button and share it out to your friends, because if you don't, you might have to turn in your geek card.